We uh, we see it every day in the boardroom. Companies throwing millions at Google Ads, chasing after the exact same tiny slice of active buyers, and then wondering why their cost per acquisition is going through the roof. Welcome to Match B2B Insights. I'm Benny Fluman, and this is where we dissect the structural engines of B2B growth. Today, we are officially launching our new branding, and with it, our core promise. We build lean client acquisition process for B2B companies. From market strategy to real customers. I have Daphne Cohen, our international growth architect, and Nelly Granitzky, our performance media and data systems strategist, here with me. Daphne, let's start with the cold, hard numbers. Why is the typical B2B lead gen machine actually built on a statistical illusion?
It really comes down to what we call the 95-5 rule. This isn't just a hunch, Benny. It's empirical research led by Professor John Dawes at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, published through the LinkedIn B2B Institute. The data shows that at any given moment, only about 5% of your target market is actually in market to buy. 5%. The other 95%? They are out of market. They aren't looking, they don't have an active budget, and they don't care about your product right now. Yet, almost all B2B marketing budgets are poured entirely into capturing that 5%.
And when you do that, when you over-index on that now buyer, you hit an immediate growth ceiling. I see these in the ad accounts all the time. Companies scale their search budgets, and suddenly the CAC, the cost to acquire a customer, doubles, while lead quality plummets. Why? Because you're fighting a bloody expensive war with all your competitors over that tiny 5%. We have to give space to the 95%. If you don't build memory structures with them now, when they do enter the market, which could be next year or in 3 years, you won't even be on their radar. We aren't here for ourselves. We are here to build a system that works for the long haul. The out-of-market audience is where your future revenue is actually born.
Yes, but Nelly, the pushback from the CEO is always, I need pipeline today. Why should I spend money on people who aren't buying? What they don't see is the operational friction. If you only target the 5%, your sales cycle is agonizingly slow because you are starting from zero trust. You have to educate them, pitch them, and discount just to stay in the game. When you market to the 95%, you are pre-selling. You are building what we call mental availability so that when they are ready, they come to you.
And that brings us to the core issue. It's a structural misalignment. If your entire marketing engine is built on immediate activation, you are essentially treating a long-term enterprise cycle like an impulse purchase. You can't squeeze blood from a stone, and you can't force the 95% to buy before they have the pain. It's about building a lean, repeatable process that captures the 5% efficiently while systematically warming up the rest. So, okay, let's talk about what happens when that 95% finally does enter the market. There's a massive study by Bain & Company and Google that completely shattered my view of how B2B procurement actually works. They found that 80 to 90% of B2B buyers, let me repeat that, 80 to 90%, already have a short list of vendors in mind before they even start active research. And here is the kicker, 90% of them end up buying from that day one shortlist. Daphne, if you aren't on that list before the search starts, you've basically lost the deal before it even began.
It is a brutal statistic, Benny. It means that the buying journey we all love to draw in our slide decks, you know, the linear funnel of awareness, consideration, decision, is largely a myth. The real battle is won in the mind, long before the procurement RFP is ever drafted. It's about building those mental memory structures, or what we call category entry points, CEPs. But how you build those structures depends entirely on your industry. If you are in high-growth SaaS, say a company like Gong, you want your brand to be the immediate cognitive shortcut for revenue intelligence or sales coaching. When a sales VP has a pipeline visibility problem, Gong is already in their head. It's fast, it's digital, it's broad category fame.
But wait, If you go to industrial manufacturing, it's a completely different world. You can't just run funny LinkedIn ads and expect a manufacturing plant manager to buy a $5 million turbine. There, the category entry points are built on legacy trust, technical compliance, and physical capability. The buyer's memory structures aren't triggered by a catchy slogan. They are triggered by specific operational failures, like our main conveyor system has a 5% downtime rate. The marketing manager there has to build mental availability around reliability and engineering authority, often through deep technical content, webinars, and localized presence. It's a much slower, deeply institutionalized memory structure.
So Nelly, what you are saying is that the media mix and the creative strategy have to match the cognitive load of the purchase. In SaaS, you might use broad digital reach to create fame. In heavy industry, you might need highly targeted, account-based authority plays to ensure you are on that day one shortlist for specific, high-value contracts.
Exactly. And the marketing manager's job, the real strategic value they bring, is identifying those specific category entry points. It's asking, what are the exact situations, the exact pain points, or the internal events that trigger our target buyer to start thinking about our category? In SaaS, it might be a new round of funding or a sales team reorg. In manufacturing, it might be a regulatory shift or a plant expansion. If you don't map your marketing to those triggers, you are just throwing noise at the wall. You won't make the shortlist.
Let's double-click on this industry variance because this is where so many B2B companies fail. They try to copy-paste a SaaS playbook into heavy industry or defense, and it's a complete train wreck. Let's look at the famous Binet and Field research. They developed the 46-54 rule for B2B, suggesting 46% of your budget should go to brand building and 54% to direct response or sales activation. But that's an average. How do we adapt this equation when we look at SaaS versus industrial manufacturing, and then the ultimate outlier, defense tech?
Oh, the 46-54 ratio is absolutely not a one-size-fits-all. In high-velocity SaaS, you might actually lean even heavier into activation and broad digital fame because your sales cycles are shorter and you can leverage product-led growth. You need distinctive digital assets, think of the HubSpot Orange or the Slack Chime, that cut through the noise of a very crowded digital space. You need broad, relentless category awareness. Your budget might look closer to 50-50 or even shift slightly toward activation if you have a strong PLG motion that acts as its own brand builder.
But then you look at industrial manufacturing. Your buyer group is small, highly technical, and extremely risk-averse. Here, the brand isn't about being famous on TikTok. It's about technical authority. You might shift the ratio to 60% brand and 40% activation, but that brand spend is invested in engineering white papers, industry standardization committees, and deep localized distribution partnerships. The activation is highly focused on strategic account-based marketing, not broad PPC campaigns. You are building a reputation that can survive a procurement process that might take 2 years and involve 15 stakeholders.
And then there is defense tech. Talk about extreme constraints. You have a monopsony, often only one buyer, the government or a military branch. You have multi-year, highly regulated procurement cycles and massive compliance barriers, like achieving an ATO, authority to operate. Daphne, how does brand building even exist in a world where you can't even publicly name your clients half the time?
It's incredibly challenging, but it is actually where brand matters most. It's just a different kind of brand. In defense tech and national security, brand is institutional credibility and relationship-based authority. Your brand budget isn't spent on Google Ads. It's spent on policy alignment, technical compliance, and hiring former defense leaders who bring immediate trust. The marketing manager's role here is to align the company's technology with the broader geopolitical narrative. You are selling national resilience, not a software tool. If the Pentagon doesn't trust that you will exist as a company in 10 years, they will not buy from you, no matter how good your code is. So the brand work is about proving long-term financial viability and deep alignment with national security objectives. The ratio here might be 80% long-term relationship building and credibility and 20% activation around specific RFP responses.
It's about understanding the rules of the game you're playing. If you try to run a SaaS retargeting campaign for a defense contract, you are literally throwing money into a black hole. They aren't clicking on your banners. They are looking at your security certifications, your board of advisors, and your compliance history. Our job is to build the right structure for the right market. There is no template.
All right, so if we agree that 95% of our audience is out of market and that building long-term mental availability is the key to winning the day one shortlist, how do we measure it? Because, let's be honest, the CFO is going to look at your brand campaign and say, where are the SQLs? Where is the pipeline for next month? If you measure a brand building strategy using short-term activation metrics, you will kill the strategy every single time. Nelly, how do we build an out-of-market scorecard that actually holds up in a board meeting?
We have to look at proxy metrics that indicate growing mental market share. I don't look at immediate form fields for this. First, I look at branded organic search volume. Are more people searching for your company name rather than generic keywords? If your branded search is growing month over month, that means your brand is occupying more space in their heads. Second, direct traffic growth. Are they typing your URL directly into the browser? And third, we look at changes in unaided recall through structured customer surveys. When you ask your target ICP, name 3 vendors in our space, does your name come up first or second? Those are the leading indicators of future pipeline.
And we have to customize these proxies by industry. In SaaS, you can track digital category search velocity, how fast your brand is growing relative to the category term. But in industrial manufacturing, your metrics are different. You should be tracking the contract renewal rate, the percentage of strategic RFQ invitations you receive without prior sales contact, and your share of wallet within key accounts. If you are getting invited to RFQs that you didn't actively pitch for, that is the ultimate proof of mental availability. You were on that day one shortlist.
And what about defense, Daphne? How do you measure mental availability there, where the data is so sparse?
In defense, you measure high-level stakeholder trust and policy alignment. Are your key executives being invited to speak at closed-door industry panels? Is your technology being cited in government research papers or policy recommendations? It's about tracking your influence on the regulatory and strategic landscape. If the military's long-term planning documents start using terminology that aligns with your product's unique capabilities, you have achieved the ultimate form of mental availability. You've shaped the market's requirements.
This requires so much professional courage from the marketing manager. It is so easy to hide behind vanity metrics. Like, look at all these ebook downloads, or our LinkedIn impressions are up 50%. But those metrics don't mean anything if they aren't translating into branded search, RFQ invitations, or pricing power. You have to stand in front of the board and say, we are building an asset. It takes 12 months to show up in revenue, but here are the leading indicators that prove we are winning the mindshare.
It really is about running your marketing department like a structural capital engine, not a call center. A call center is a cost center. You put money in, you get some activity out. But the moment you stop paying, the activity stops. A capital engine is an asset. You build it, it compounds, and it continues to generate value long after the initial spend. When you build mental availability with the 95%, you are building an asset that your competitors cannot easily copy or buy their way out of.
And that is how you manage internal expectations. When you present this to the board, you don't show up with creative designs or vague promises. You show up with empirical data. You show them the Binet and Field frameworks, you show them the Ehrenberg-Bass research, and you say, this is how B2B buyers actually behave. If we continue to spend 100% of our budget on the 5%, we will hit a wall. Here is our plan to systematically capture the 95% over the next 18 months. It shifts the entire conversation from marketing is an expense to marketing is a strategic growth driver.
It really does. And today, with the tools we have, we can build these lean client acquisition processes with incredible precision. But it starts with the strategy. It starts with knowing who your ICP is, what their category entry points are, and having the discipline to stick to the plan even when the short-term pressure is high. We have a saying we live by. We build lean client acquisition process for B2B companies, from market strategy to real customers. That is the standard we hold ourselves to, and it's the standard we build for our clients.
That's a perfect place to wrap things up. If you are tired of hitting those growth ceilings, if your CAC is climbing, and your pipeline feels unpredictable, maybe it's time to stop chasing the 5% and start building the infrastructure to win the other 95. You can find more insights at matchb2b.com. Daphne, Nelly, great discussion as always. Talk soon.
Thanks, Benny. Looking forward to the next one.